what I would like to indicate more in terms of little bit of science to how it can lead to the policy part. Unfortunately, I didn't get your information earlier. Otherwise, I would have put tsunami because I have been working with tsunami for more than 5-6 years only for the operation. Maybe I will cover 2-3 slides with the tsunami, seeing the interest of the people. You can ask some of the questions. In fact, taking a lead from that Ramchandra, one of the areas why the salinity varies, there was one question from his side also. Whether it really varies due to salinity or nutrient. That part I will cover, suppose if you have a damming on the downstream. So my outline of the presentation is coastal erosion along the Indian coast. I am not going to tell much theory about that. I think Professor Sundar has already talked about that. And causes of the coastal erosion, whether it is natural or man-made, this is one of the questions for one of the audience, whether what spatial scale we should address this, and its relation to the spatial scale. This I am going to cover in detail. And methods adopted for coastal protection, which briefly Professor Sundar has already talked about that, but I will tell you how to take it into the policy. Then management of shoreline along the open coast. Why I told open coast is because it is quite different from the bay in Noor and Pondicherry. Professor Sundar has talked about Pondicherry in one angle, but what I would like to cover is, like if you take entire Pondicherry coast as a whole, how do you plan for the coastal protection measure? The other important aspect is the inlet management. This is where we have all this kind of pollutant coming into the sea when it's closed, and then ecosystem is getting affected because of the closure of inlet. And damming problem is partly covered as part of this. And finally, what could be the improvement in the shoreline environment? This essentially, if you see the coastal zone management, it covers various gamut of issues. But shoreline management essentially talks about the protection of the coast, not in isolation, in total of the shoreline. It is also depending upon up to what level we want to constrain the coastal erosion and then without affecting the adjacent coast. Here we use some kind of analysis and modeling, but of course I am not going to tell much theory of the analysis and modeling, but I will tell you how these tools can be applied to analyze for the overall. And finally the conclusion, which is very useful for the workshop, of what kind of recommendations we can have. When we look at the causes, storms, extreme waves, sea level rise, somebody was asking about that. Other point which you are missing from most of our cases is persistent low pressure. Even though we don't have a cyclone, but I will show you with some of the slides, a low pressure systems in some of the seas can create a erosion on the coast, which is quite alarming compared to the storm. These are some of the pictures from the sea level rise, pictures from different places along the coast. Most unfortunate thing for the sea level rise to analyze along the Indian coast is we have a data set at few locations. This is the data from the NIO Goa, which Dr. Munikishan was analyzing using the Survey of India data. But really want to do for that, we always have a confusion for the sea level rise. It is because of the rise in the water level or the subsidence due to the earthquake. This confusion is always there, and then there are methods to separate these two things out. But I am not going to cover much of that, but it is the big science behind that, how to analyze these things further. Other part is the man-made one is development of ports, which some of the audience were already talking about that. Damming of the rivers. Dr. Ramchandra was looking at damming of rivers on the ecosystem, but we are looking at damming of river on the other side. One that I will tell when it comes to the next part. And dredging of the tidal inlets, which comes essentially the benthic fauna, how it is getting affected when you have a tidal inlet. All coastal protection to revetments or drives, etc. to control the erosion and construction of structures for prevention of siltation of the river had a cross impact. This is how do we address this? Can you see from the point of view of the regulation or some kind of policy guidelines we want to develop it for that? How to address these issues? This is the extreme event which I was telling about, the Thane cyclone, where we had observation of tide together with the storm surge to measure for that. Unfortunately, some of the data which we have along the Indian coast really does not give what is the surge height which is there at the coast. The reason is most of the tide gauges are located inside harbour. It is contaminated with the harbour oscillations. It is nothing but harbour can generate some oscillations that gives a wrong data for them. So this is where we had one opportunity of collecting the data on the open coast to see the surge level for them. What we have done is we have collected the data for a period of 15 days, which is inclusive of the tide. The rise in the fall of the water level together with the storm surge. Then we removed the tide because it is a simple process of use in mathematical one called Fourier analysis, where we can separate the tidal signal because it is periodic in nature. Then we got the storm surge here, which shows that the Thane cyclone, the surge height was around 0.7 meters, excluding the tide. Suppose if it comes in high tide, then you will have another 0.7 meters added to that. That is why the storm surge can create a havoc when it occurs during the high tide, not in the low tide. Similarly, the wave height, which was recorded right on the coast, is somewhere around 7 meters, and this is one of the valuable data what we could able to see for validating the model. If you want to apply it for other areas, this shows during the cyclone how it comes. The second part, which I was telling about, the persistent low pressures during the 2007. 2007, we don't have much of the cyclones or anything, but entire east coast and west coast was subjected to, west coast means up to Kanyakumari, but not on the other side. All the areas were eroded. This is the case at Puri. The entire sand dune and infrastructure got lost during this particular time without cyclone. So that means we don't anticipate that when the cyclone is there only we will get erosion. Non-cyclonic times also we can get the erosion. But how to tackle this issue, which I'll tell you later. Similarly, the same is the case with the Vizag. So we started analyzing the data right from Kanyakumari up to the Puri. Same situation for this. This is because of the low pressure formations, which is frequent in right from August up to the November, that has caused this problem for them. This is the case which Professor Sundar was telling about. After he studied Pondicherry, how the pre-cyclone, what was the status of the building. After cyclone, we can see the building is completely into the water. Now there is a big and hue and cry with NGOs and then fishermen also. What kind of protection measures we require for that? Coming to the other part, if you don't have a cyclone or anything, we started analyzing the data from 1975 to 2005. That means almost up to 3 decades. We show the coastline oscillations at the one place in Ennore, which he was talking about north of the Chennai. This data clearly indicates the coast itself oscillates with a natural cushion of 50 to 100 meters. That means if I am planning any kind of my structures or anything or any kind of whatever infrastructure on this area in the area of the cushion, then naturally you will get erosion and then we should not try for that. So you should have at least 50 to 100 meters of the region depending upon the area. This is not same for the entire coastline, but we are trying to figure out for the entire coastline how this natural cushion varies for that. But at this particular place, the natural oscillation is somewhere around 50 to 100 meters, which is without effect of any of the structures. Then coming to the man-made intervention. This is the Ennore port. Right from the beginning of the Ennore port, actual field data was collected at the Ennore port. This satellite data shows in 1999 when the port breakwaters were coming up, and 2000 the breakwaters were there, anticipating the erosion on the northern side, which shows here there was no beach fill. Whatever the material they have dredged from here, they have placed on the north, and this keep on eroding, which is very natural for the east coast of India. So it took somewhere around up to 2007, 6 years, this entire field got lost. That is the reason why the northern coast was protected, because you had a material supplied to the north. This shows the actual field data collected at Ennore. Southern side, you get accretion up to 300 meters. Northern side, whatever beach was gone, it is there, it got eroded because of this major port. Looking at the impact of this port, what is the extent of impact of the port we get along the coast? We analyze this coastline right from here to here, a 20 kilometer stretch of the coast. 3 kilometers is the effect of the coast, beyond that there is no much effect. But it doesn't mean if you don't bypass the sand, that effect can go further north. If you have a fill, so that's why this effect is restricted only to this. If you don't have fill here, then it can propagate to other place. That is the case with the Chennai port. Then we try to figure out what is the impact of the man-made one and then natural one. There is a one analysis which is available, it's called even odd analysis. Even means which is natural change, and odd means which is due to the man-made one. So natural oscillation is around 50 meters, but man-made oscillation is around 200 meters. We need to clearly demarcate these two things and let us not get confused with the natural and man-made further. Second one is the seasonal closure of the tidal inlet. All the inlets in the east coast, they seasonally close and opens to the coast depending upon the fresh water coming from the top. This is the Vallar inlet at Kadalur, where the mouth is open. We can see here 300 meters width of the mouth where the fishing trawlers comes in then. But most surprisingly, this particular one right from the July keep on closing, and finally in the month of September you don't have a connection between the sea and here. When you don't have connection between sea and estuary, what happens is the entire salinity inside the estuary is going to be rise, because you don't have fresh water coming from the land upstream, but the salt water remains in the estuary. Due to evaporation, the salinity levels inside the estuary keep rising it further. Then we try to see how over a period of time the estuary has changed. These are the data right from 1969 to 1998, which Ramchandran has analyzed in different point of view of ecology. But we analyzed this data for how the inlet is getting changed over a period of time. But when you look at this entire scene, there is no change in the overall configuration of inlet, but there are minor variations with respect to the seasonal one. Then we try to figure out what are the long-term changes along the coast. See, this is in 1999, where you have a coastline with the pink, but in 1998 you show the accretion here. All the inlets are bound to accrete because the sand is coming from the upstream. But the moment we have a obstruction due to dam, then naturally your sediments to the coast is reduced, then you will get the accretion is reduced. That is the reason why after the dam, somewhere in 1998 or before that, then these are the consolidated states for that, which he was asking about the what scale we are going to ask for that. One is the natural causes, what are the natural causes and what scale we should address it for that. If it is a very long term, we address it more than 100 kilometers, there are sediment availability and reduced sea level change comes under this part. But these are some of the evaluations of the coast, how it can vary further. But we see for the long term scale, which goes from somewhere around 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers, the reasons will be relative sea level change, regional climate variations and coast inlet cycles, which I showed earlier also. Inlet changes its cycles over a period of time. Also extreme events comes with this. 2007 event is classified as a long term event for them. Then similarly mid-term changes, the scale will be somewhere around 10 to 5 kilometers, where you get a local climate, wave climate variations and extreme events as a part of them. Last part is the seasonal part, which is the very short term in nature. Then you need to have a high resolution analysis for that, which is between 5 to 1 kilometer. The process which are responsible for this kind of short term cases is wave, tide and then such conditions within a year for that. Similarly, when we look at man-made interventions for that long term one, river regulations, damming and all those things comes at the first part. When we come to the long term, reclamation and then closures, changing of upstream catchment and all those things on the long term. And medium terms, we have structures which Professor Sundar was telling about the ports and subfloor structures of any protection structures comes under mid term. And last part is the very localized one of somewhere around 100 meter, 200 meter structures on the coast. So we have on one side natural causes, other side we have man-made changes, which changes with respect to the spatial scale for that. Sediment transport phenomena, when we say it is a short-term scale, means it is 1 year. So we cannot say once and all, it is not at all a case for that. When we say medium-term scale, means it should be around 5 years, and long-term scale means it should be above 10-year scale for that. So with this background, what we are normally adopted along the Indian coast. Normally, whenever we see erosion, we will dump the stones on the coast. The result is you have a beach, there is no beach. Somebody for our future generation, we want to show the beach means we will show only the stones because we cannot show the beach. The reason is we will keep on dumping only stones along the coast. And the stones, one of the major setback with this stone is each and every time whenever the storm comes, some of the stones will be removed. So initially the stones will be here, later it will go here and then it will go here. Entire this area will become like a garbage bin along the coast. What is the reason for that? One is the which I will tell about some of the interventions from the policy makers or others, from the scientists also. The basic problem with the level of understanding of the coast is not completely clear. We don't pay much attention for that because this area we don't want to spend much money for that. Artificial beach nourishment, this is one of the area which Professor Sundar has told. Till in, I remember Vizag was intact last 30 years even after construction of the port because their management practices are good. Because the port is doing that operation of taking the sand from the sand trap and putting on the north. That's how this coast is protected. So we have Indian case working well, but unfortunately in some other places this is not being implemented properly for that. This is one of the success story of that. Then coming back to the total plan for the shoreline management plan. Actually this was done right now, even though I am in NIOT. Earlier I was working with ICMAM. That particular time under the World Bank we did this shoreline management plan for the open coast of the Ennur. When we started this plan, we started with extensive data collection, but at the end of the plan we come out with a minimum data collection scheme, what it is required and how you prepare the plan for that. This shows, which I already showed about this picture, how the port has impact on that. This is the area which we have taken for the 20 kilometer stretch and analyzed all these cases. We collected all these parameters of tides, coastal currents, waves and nearshore currents, which Sundar was showing about the moving of the currents along the coast in nearshore currents, which is very important for the planning of any structures. And this kind of information is required for analyzing at the reason scale parameters. This shows in east coast we have a straightforward phenomena during northeast monsoon. The currents are towards south, but during the southwest monsoon the currents are towards north. So it is well predicted to reasonable extent, which we could able to use it for the numerical model for them. Similarly, on the coast, how the currents there. This is the place where we have a nearshore current measured there. Wherever we have a port, we have a zigzag pattern of the current. But if you see at this place, since the coast is straight, you have current moving parallel to the coast. Since the coastal orientation has changed, then your current orientation also changes further. All these things form essential inputs for the preparation of management plan and anything for them. But I don't recommend this kind of complete exhaustive study for all those things. But with this, we had a set of parameters what we measured for solar plan for Indian coast has been analyzed, and then it has been prepared as a part of the report for that. This shows how the data has been used for different conditions for April, September in one monsoon, and November, January, northeast monsoon for prediction of the currents. Now we can use it for that entire region. Similarly, we collected data on the suspended sediment concentration as well as bed sediment size at both the Ennur location, which really shows that with respect to the season, the suspended sediment concentration or bed concentration doesn't change much. So this gives an indication if I collected data only for 2 times, it is okay or fine for my preparation of solar environment plan for that. Then the important aspect for that one is how do we quantify the sediments moving along the north to south. Even though Professor Sundar has told about sand of 0.2, Cedar Palace comes, it gives 0.5, and another institute comes, it gives 0.2. So there is a lot of uncertainty in the estimation of long-term sediment transport. So this kind of data is very much required for accurately predicting the sediment transport movement along that. Using the data of 6 years with a simple measurements, we could able to estimate the long-shore sediment transport along this particular part of the coast, which is 0.3 million cubic meter per year. Unless we have this data correctly, then we cannot plan any intervention properly. Then we use that data for modifying this beach nourishment, which I showed earlier. They have given a configuration like that, but we did with the data and numerical modeling and then showed with the same quantity and the material with modified beach dimensions, the efficiency of the protection scheme can be improved for the system. So what essentially I want to highlight here is, if you have a reliable data there with reliable quantities of estimates of sediment transport, you can plan for the better management solution rather than working out in ad hoc way for them. This is what you are saying about one of the soft solutions where they have a submerged sand mound which is existing there. Now the new developmental activities are planning to remove this sand mound for that, then you will have a lot of problem for the coast. So you want to show, suppose if you remove this, the wave height on the coast will be magnified by 70% more than that. This shows the analysis of data for that. During original shoal and then this is the existing shoal what we have for that. Suppose if you have a mound which is built up, that the height on the leeward of the shoal is reduced for that. So use natural material to be dumped on this particular part of the coast so that you get a better protection on the coast. Similarly, this exercise is done for how much of accretion I can get. Suppose if I put a sand mound or soft solution in the sea, which gives us somewhere around 20 meters will be the accretion on the coast, and such kind of solutions are more useful for the future so that we will not have a garbage and of stones or anything for them. The other case is the Pondicherry which he was telling. Originally the beach was there, now beach is completely lost, and this problem initially was here, later they have shifted to here, now it has gone to here. Any kind of art structure, if you don't plan it properly, what I am doing is I am taking my garbage from my house and putting in the next house. So that problem has been transferred to, now it is 16 kilometers of the coast is with some protection of walls on it. This shows what we have done for this Pondicherry government has asked NMOT to do this study. So we documented all these things, what are the existing protection measures which was implemented earlier. Professor Sundar was mentioning about sand bypassing was done, which was showing good result, but we don't have a will to continue it further, we stopped that. After the sand bypassing was stopped, then the city was subjected to erosion. Now they have put all the stones along the coast, now there is no beach in the Pondicherry. Then later they found that some part of the Tamil Nadu, we wanted a beach. Then IIT has recommended drawings, they implemented partially. Some place you have beach, but again adjacent areas of the drawing, you got erosion on the northern side for them. This is the inlet which shows over a period of time right from 2005 to up to 2011. Here we don't have accretion. slowly started accreting, now it is accreting. Then what you would like to infer from this is, as long as the sand is bypassed to the north, this particular coast will keep on eroding it. The moment it bypasses to north, then you don't have a much accretion problem. So what we need to do is, till we bypass this sand, we need to supply the sand to here. The moment it started bypassing there, then you don't have to supply the sand further. That's why whenever we do some kind of nourishment on the north, our cost of the nourishment will be high till it bypasses the sand. The moment it started pitching the tip of this breakwater, then your maintenance cost of the nourishment will come down further. So one of the policy could be, you should ask the port authorities to put the sand which is required till this sand is bypassed to them, so that they are creating this problem, so they should only solve at the initial stage. Later part, whatever is done by the local development authorities can take up that. Then we analyze this coast for the, we have another peculiar problem for this Pondicherry is, some area it is under Pondicherry, some area under Tamil Nadu. These people will do some protection method, which will have another effect on that. Without seeing what will happen to Pondicherry, Tamil Nadu will do another thing. Like that, they have a typical situation here. Tamil Nadu government want Grayan and Pondicherry government want seawall. That's how they totally confused this coast. When we made this plan for that, first thing what our recommendation is, both the governments come together and then do unified solution for entire area, then only it will have a long-term solution. Otherwise, you cannot have a long-term solution. That's how we classified this area as A, which is a port affected area, B, which is affected by the seawall of a Pondicherry government, C is Grayan, which was built by the Tamil Nadu government, and D is now facing erosion at present because of these three protection methods which was already implemented by the different agencies for them. This plan has been prepared, and then we don't want to waste the time unless you two people come together and then give us what you wanted us to do for them. And these are some of the inference for them. Long-term shoreline changes data which shows the importance of the data, but we have not spent much money for that. The reason is, now fairly we know what kind of data is required for them. The basic objective of shoreline restoration project is water and erosion using a proper structures. It need not be always the structure for that. Sometimes which some of the people are asking for that, where we go for structure, where we are not going for structure. Wherever our areas are very important installations are there, that place you may have to have some kind of structures, but all the places you don't need really any structures for that. If you plan properly total shoreline management plan, then you don't require the structures for that. And long-term permanent solution can be found only if Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry government jointly work together. This is what in fact Rakesh Bansal recommends for that, unless we have this is very difficult. This is not the common problem for the only Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry, but many states. Similarly, some places we need a short-term solution because people cannot wait for, I will build a solution after 10 years means they will not wait. So you can plan for short-term solution, but that should form a part of the long-term solution, so that we will not have a no regret solution for that. So the beach nourishment has already shown as a proper solution for that. Let us go for the beach nourishment for Pondicherry coast for that. Coming to the Vellar inlet at Tamil Nadu. This is what, after seeing this long-term change, we started monitoring the inlet every month, right from April up to May 2005. So it covers somewhere around more than 15 months data. If you start seeing here, in April the spit is of this length. That means the sea is connected, estuary is connected to sea. As and when we start seeing up to June, then its spit started growing up to the north. The connection between the sea is slowly, gradually reducing. And in August, it further reduced. September, it is completely closed. That means we don't have any connection between estuary and sea in the month of September. The basic reason is this interaction of the sea as well as the tidal pressure which is there inside the estuary for them. In October, we have a northeast monsoon coming up for the Tamil Nadu coast. It opens up the mouth, again it opens up. So what need to be done for the intervention for that is, the critical period for closure of inlet is right from the May to July. Any intervention we plan in this particular one, which will be economical also, it is viable for implementation for them. Since we have a damming on the upstream, we cannot expect the coast to be behaved in the same way without the dam. When dam was not there, this phenomena was not there. But so after the dam is there, you are reducing the freshwater inflow from the top, then naturally you have this kind of problem. Then we need to have some kind of intervention. We should follow the nature together so that we will not have much difficulty. Even we had some kind of observation during the tsunami also. People used to say tsunami has opened and all those things. In fact, during the tsunami, these entire areas were flattened out and some of the sand dunes which were there really are protected and then they have lost it. But now, building of the sand dune takes years together to formulate for them. Losing of the sand dune will be lost in one day, but building takes at least 5 to 6 years for it. Then we try to analyze the different period, how the estuary behaves for them. In April, there was no much siltation. In August, you can see here, the siltation has increased. In December, again we have a freshwater flow, it is opened up, so you have much less siltation here. Then we try to quantify different zones along the estuary, right from here to here. Up to what extent we will have a siltation in the estuary. With respect to that, we start seeing here, which taking back from that Ramchandran's inference for that. In the month of April, you see this red line is the volume of water exchange between the sea and this one. But if we go to August, it has reduced. Because we have closer of inlet, we don't get much of water into the estuary. But again in the December, we have northeast monsoon coming up there, more water is exchanged. Accordingly, the salinity also, or a seasonal cycle to keep on varying it further. When you have fresh water, you have one kind of phenomena. When you don't have fresh water, you have another phenomena. Similarly, sedimentation also, in this region we don't have much sedimentation, but sedimentation is more here. The moment you have silted up this area, the exchange of water between the sea and it is reduced, then the salinity inside the estuary is keep on rising up, and then you get a higher salinity during the dry months because of the closure of inlet followed with evaporation from the. Then we try to estimate how much the tide travels over a period of time. This is also an important one which can be there for that. But of course, the west coast phenomenon is slightly different, which I don't have slides for that, but I can tell you for that. In the month of April, this is the tide. In the open ocean, suppose if you have 1 meter, inside if it goes means it will be only 0.4 meters in the April. But same time if you started seeing in the month of August, it will be dropped down by almost 50%. That means the tidal pressure in the August is reduced. Again, in the month of December, since the fresh water is there and mouth is open, you got a more tidal water exchange between the sea and estuary. So we put all this data and try to predict the spit growth model for the arriving at some kind of conclusion for that, which shows this is coinciding with the wave climate in that. Right from the July to August, where we get southeasterly wave, the sediment transport rate is also high. That is one of the reasons why the spit forms longer in the month of July to August. Then these are some of the conclusions from the inlet. The seasonal closure of inlet is governed by the tidal prism. That means the volume of tidal water enters into the estuary or bay, and rate of littoral transport. That means sand which is moving along the coast. And important one is the freshwater inflow into the estuary or bay. So all these things, phenomena which control not only the sand transfer movement but also the salinity into the estuary. Then tidal inlet opens up during the months of October, November due to the freshwater inflow during northeast monsoon. It starts closing gradually from the end of the May and permanently closes during August and September. But in west coast, even though we don't have much of these phenomena, but it is almost similar to that. In dry months, you don't get much of water exchange between the sea and estuary, but other time you get that. That is the reason why when we had a Goa study for the 40 kilometers, you never believe that tide travels up to 30 kilometers into the estuary. So we can see the tidal water variation in the estuary up to 30 kilometers. Similarly for Netravati we did, but it is not up to that extent. It is up to 20 kilometers. I am not sure about the you were telling about one Ashtamudi or what you were telling one river? Aganashni. That part we have not done, but the tidal range is less, but it is also of that order only, somewhere around 10 kilometers only the water exchange. What here it happens for the estuary is, the moment you put the dam on the other side, same thing which you were asking about, the dynamics of the whole system is going to be changed. The amount of, in fact you are talking the nutrients from the upstream side. There is another problem, the nutrient exchange from sea also is going to be affected for them. In fact, sea gives a lot of good nutrients also in some areas. Chilka, one of the peculiar phenomena is CDH chief has not come. When the mouth got closed, then the fresh water is only coming for them. That time they had a big problem of weeds growing all along them. The moment mouth is closed, they have all the freshwater pieces and weeds, and then severe problem of eutrophication, and then entire thing ecosystem got changed for them. They wanted to open the mouth only to improve the marine ecosystem to take place in the Chilka Lagoon. Siltation inlet is restricted only to 2 km and maximum being the first 1 km. These are the inferences from the study. and we try to use some kind of numerical model how to open this inlet in a most economical way, which doesn't affect the other part of the coast for that. These are all the some of the numerical simulation done, and then it was submitted to state government also. The end, what we need for improvement of shoreline plan is she was rightly asking about spatial and temporal scales as to very important for the shoreline change analysis. Unless we have these maps, at least 1:5000 or 1:20 scale, we cannot do anything for it. For that, some agencies require long-term monitoring of. Unfortunately, shoreline change except Tamil Nadu, there are few states which monitor this data long-term, which is not expensive, but there is no wheel for them. Similarly, sediment transport, which can be done by only by scientific institute, and then that has to be done. I think we are doing part of the entire course. Ministry of Earth Sciences has taken up this task, and then we will be doing it shortly. Similarly, this part also will be done by us, and we do some experiments and numerical models which can be used for the management plan. Once we have all this data, we can clearly estimate the sediment budget, which gives that how much of the source of the sediments, how much of the sink, and different activities which is happening along the coast, like beach fill, dredge placement, dredging and mining. All these things we account and then ultimately prepare a budget for that. It is similar like other budget, normal budget what we prepare, so that which will be used for preparation of management plan. We try to do this. Our concept was entire coastline is divided in number of blocks as a regions, depending upon the, not based on the state, it is based on the sediment itself, and come out with a regional model for that. Each block will have somewhere around 3 regional models which will be set up, that can be used for any of the state governments to operate it for planning of any developmental activities. When we come to the conclusion part, that traditionally we have all the seawalls, dragons, bulkhead and deterrent. They are not at all a solution. I think Sundar has also mentioned about that. Now the modern concept is dune restoration. Submerged breakwaters are reefs, submerged reefs which can always support ecological systems also, nourishment, bypassing and circulation. Last part which is very catching nowadays is hybrid solution. Some part we can have a hard solution, but which is very limited in nature. Mostly we have 70% of solution will be soft solution, 30% will be the hard solution for that. Then you need to worry about amenity, aesthetics, understanding, and all those things can be taken part from the modern solutions for it. Concluding part of my listing, the basic objective of shore restoration project should address natural dynamics of the coast. If it is well understood, then we can have a better solution for that. We need to clearly demarcate long-term versus short-term shoreline changes. Otherwise, our management of the shoreline itself is complicated. And setback lines should be decided based on this data, not on the ad hoc basis. The state problems of uncertainties in the estimation of sediment transport in limiting the decision of coastal protection schemes. Because each agency gives different rates, that always confuses the what kind of protection measures we offer for the coast. This can be done only if the coastal processes are all understood properly. And most of the coastal protection schemes are constrained by the state boundaries, which I was telling about Pondicherry and Tamil Nadu, but shoreline management should be free from the above constraint. Short-term solutions can be there, which is a hard in nature, but should be form a part of the long-term solutions. And we need to have eco-friendly techniques like soft engineering measures, where we was talking about the restoring the ecological values of the adjacent areas, even the benthos and all those things, what it affects it. In fact, we did some studies for the even beach nourishment also, how much it can affect the benthic fauna. As long as you are implementing the scheme, you are likely to have some disturbance to the benthic, but again, like Sundaramurthy will tell more on that, it will come back to the normal shape after implementing the solution. So immediately after the tsunami, ICMAM has done a lot of study with vulnerability maps for the entire coastline, which shows here the complete gamut of information is there available. Here the 0 to 1, 1, 2 to 3 and 3 2 to are the threat level map. How much the water level can inundate on the land with respect to height was mapped using numerical model as well as field data. And then we had all this kind of village boundaries and everything to be there for that. In fact, Survey of India, our ministry wanted to have this kind of maps at initially at 1:20,000 scale, but later we wanted to go at least 1:10,000 scale, so that which can be used for administrators to plan for disaster mitigation. We are not done for the policy level, but same thing can be used for when we go for actual implementation at the CRZ level. The most difficult task is putting this one in the administrative boundaries for that. The cadastral maps, most of the maps are not discharged properly. Transferring this data into that one is a very complicated task, but we could able to do it for Tamil Nadu. There are some maps are available at cadastral level. That's why we were successful in that. But other places it is a quite complicated task, and the state only has to be done for that. And this shows different stretches how it has been done. And when we go to the fine scale, we will get the map of this scale. It shows the history inlet and how much inundation is there with complete sort of information. But this map, I leave it to you so you can just go through them. Thank you.